Today's word, again, is one that I would probably have trouble spelling in a spelling bee, expungement, even though it's in the news.
There you go, expungement. And we're going to talk a lot today about expungement, but let me just give you an overview of what expungement is. Expungement is the process of removing a charge or charges from your official state record. And that's going to become important when we get to the end of this. It takes it off the official state record, but with good old Google out there, it may not take it off your record because things can still pop up. So expungement is just very simply the process of getting something removed from your record, and that's your criminal record, which I guess is that thing they always warned us as a kid, this is going to go on your permanent record. That's what we're talking about.
And when we talk about expungement in Kentucky now, we talk about the fact that we have just started, I guess you call it a program, but a way for some offenses to be expunged from a record.
That's right. So we've always had the process to remove two different things. One was a misdemeanor.
Okay.
And so misdemeanor, if you didn't catch some earlier shows, we've done one on these before. A misdemeanor is any crime that is a punishment of less than 1 year in jail. And so misdemeanors, also typically when you talk to lawyers and judges and things, we include in misdemeanors traffic offenses, things like that. But it's your smaller crimes. So we've always had the ability in Kentucky, if you've been convicted of a misdemeanor, and you've got to watch this, you didn't have any other misdemeanors 5 years before that one, and you don't have any misdemeanors 5 years after that one could be eligible to be expunged off your record.
That's 10 years of being good.
10 years of being good, yeah.
And actually, some of those probably misdemeanors are, as you pointed out, are things that you just almost accidentally do.
Yeah, stupid mistakes. Really.
Stupid mistakes.
Stupid mistakes. So we've always had the process to get rid of those misdemeanors. We've also had a process for years to get rid of a case that might have been dismissed. So you were charged with a crime, but ultimately you were found not guilty, or there was a plea or something, but anyhow, it got dismissed. But when people would run your record check, it still shows up that, hey, Roth was charged with X. And, for employment purposes and things, you don't even want that fact that you were charged on there. So we also had a way to get dismissed cases off of your record. Okay. But up until now, we've never had the ability to get a felony off your record. No. And what has happened, and David Floyd, our outgoing state rep, was a big proponent of this bill. And I can tell you from my personal experience, you just have so many good people that, through a stupid mistake, ended up getting charged and convicted of a felony, but not what you think of a felony. Felony is a big crime, a crime where the punishment is more than 1 year in jail. And what we do in Kentucky, Roth, we have different degrees of felonies. Right. So at the very bottom, we have the Class D felony, where it's 1 to 5 years. Then we have the C's, where it's 5 to 10. Then the B's, where it's 10 to 20. And then we have the A's, where it can be really bad. So this law only impacts some D felonies. Okay?
Some of the D's. Yeah.
Some of the D's, not all of the D's. And in particular, it does not do any sex crimes, a couple other categories like that. They have a long list in the statute.
So this is a situation where there's some windows of time that come into play here, as you mentioned a second ago?
Yeah, just like on the misdemeanor one, you've got to have had 5 years go by, and during that 5 years you can't have committed any other crimes for this one to be eligible.
Misdemeanor or felony?
Yeah, it looks like it's misdemeanor or felony. Okay. So you've got to have been good during that 5-year period. And remember this with a felony. The reason it's so important to get these felonies off your record is if you're convicted of a felony, number one, you lose the right to vote. Number two, you lose the right to carry a firearm, which even includes, going hunting and stuff like that. Right. So you might have people that, when they were 18, wrote a bad check for $100. And at the time, $100 was the felony cutoff.
That was the threshold?
Yeah. And so, boom, they got a felony on their record, even though nowadays we'd almost laugh at that crime. Yeah. And so there's a lot of society that is impacted by these silly felonies, I'm going to call them, that need to get this cleaned up. So step number one, though, for everybody is you've got to go get an expungement certificate. And actually, this applies whether it's a misdemeanor expungement or a felony expungement. And the expungement certificate is very simply basically a copy of your criminal record. And the Administrative Office of the Courts and the Kentucky State Police review your criminal record, and they will make a determination of whether or not a particular charge is expungible, if that's the right word, if it's eligible to be expunged. And the court system wants to see that. So the first step you have to do is go get it. And unfortunately, it can take 30 days or so to get. And you can get it in one of three ways. And if you're listening out there and you're interested in this, you can call me. But I'm going to give you a couple of places to go on the web throughout today's talk. So you might want to have a pen and paper handy. But first, you can go online to KentuckyCourts.net, and there's a place to quote unquote request a record. So you can go there, pay the $40 online, and get your expungement certificate. The important thing to remember, whichever way you get it, and I'm going to tell you two other ways you can go get it, it's only valid for 30 days. So once you get it, start running, because we got to get in front of a judge and get everything done within that 30 days, or otherwise you're going to have to go file and pay another $40 and get another one. So one way to get it is request it online. Go to KentuckyCourts.net, record request. The second way you could do it is you can go in person to the Administrative Office of the Courts in Frankfort. They're at 1001 Vandelay Drive, and they're open from 8 to 4 p.m., and you can literally just go in there and fill out form RU009. And actually, you can fill that form out online and print it off and take it with you if you want. And then same thing, you have to pay the $40. Or you can fill out that form RU009 and mail it in. But when you mail it in, it's got to go to the Records Unit. I think that's what the RU stands for, Records Unit. At the Administrative Office of the Courts, 1001 Vandelay Drive, Frankfort, Kentucky, 40601. Now, again, $40 for that form, and they're going to then send you your expungement certificate.
And when does the clock start running on that 30-day? Is it dated, I'm assuming?
It's dated, right. So
okay.
it's going to and you'll get it a couple days into your 30.
Yeah.
But it's dated, and it'll have right on the top, only valid for 30 days from, and it'll have blank date.
Okay.
So once you get it, and what I'm telling everybody here is you don't have to have a lawyer to help with this. You can do this on your own. And that'll certainly save you some money. So the next step is you got to fill out the expungement application form. The expungement application form can be found at it's courts.ky.gov, courts.ky.gov, and they've got legal forms there. And so the expungement application is form 496.3. Again, that's form 496.3. So you can fill that out. And there's actually quite a bit of information they're going to need on there. And all of the information that you need for the form is on that expungement certificate. Okay? So just sort of take your time and look. So, for example, you've got to know exactly what case number that the charge was in. And if it's a felony, these will either be a CR, if it was in circuit court, or an F, as in Frank, if it was in district court, because you can have a felony from either one, or at least be charged that way. It'll tell you the county that it was charged in, and so you're going to know the court, the county. Then you need to have your name is exactly like it's spelled on the record. And this
even if it's misspelled.
Even if it's misspelled, and that happens.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure that it's the same so that when they go to do the expungement, they get the right stuff. You're also going to want to have to put your address, your date of birth, and your social security number. Now, one thing to remember on your social, don't put your full social. The way we do it in court is 3 X's dash 2 X's dash your last 4 digits. And again, they want those last 4 digits and your birthday, just so when they're looking at the record, they know, okay, we got the right person, the one we're supposed to be getting. The other thing that they might ask for, well, they ask for it, but you may or may not have it, is something called a jail ID. whenever you're incarcerated, and again, we're talking felony cases, so a lot of these folks did actually spend some time in jail. You get another number in Kentucky called your jail ID, and it is a unique, I think it's 6-digit, but it may be 9. You get a unique number that kind of like your own social for you. It's just for jails. You want to make sure you put that on there if you have one, again, so that when the prison system goes to erase the records, they can get everything that needs to be erased. Now, don't panic if you don't have one. Some folks didn't go to jail. They didn't get a jail ID. If you don't have one, just put NA down for where it says jail ID.
Where would you find that? Would that be on?
It is going to be on this expungement report.
Okay.
And the other way you can look it up is you can get online, and there is a, it's called COOL, Kentucky Online Offender something. I forget the acronym, but basically it's a way to do a lookup, and you can find out about yourself what your prison ID number is if you have one. The next thing they're going to want to know is the violation date or the arrest date. So if you didn't get arrested, if you voluntarily appeared in court, you'll just have a violation date. If you did have an arrest date, it'll be on there. And these are all on that expungement certificate. So just sort of, take your time, look through it. Then you need to make sure you put down the actual charge that you were charged with. And I'll tell you this. When you talk to lawyers, we use something called a KRS, which is the statute. So you might have been charged with violating KRS 218A.413, possession of cocaine or whatever. But the court systems use a different standard, something called a UOR. And the police use the UOR. So be careful and make sure you're on this one putting the actual name of the charge. And I would recommend writing it out as it's listed on the report and not just relying on either of those numbers. And it's crazy, but I guess the police must have a list of those numbers, and they'll very quickly sometimes scroll through the list, pick one, and they'll have frequently where the number doesn't match what's written in words. So we do go by what they've written in words, not necessarily the number. Then here's the big change. Unlike a misdemeanor one, this one you have to put down the names and addresses of any victims. So if it was a crime involving somebody else, because what's going to happen as a part of this process is there's going to be victim notification. The victims are going to find out that you're applying for an expungement. And unlike in the misdemeanor one, the prosecutors, who are going to sort of be speaking for the victim here, are going to have an opportunity to come in and object. So this is not an automatic process. Just because you're eligible for expungement of your felony does not mean that you're guaranteed to have it expunged. And that's something that I think people are going to have trouble with. And we may see different counties handling it differently on what they're willing to expunge and what they're not willing to expunge, because it's going to be up to the individual judge in each county with each case.
If somebody does object to that, does the judge make that final ruling?
The judge absolutely makes the final ruling. And so what's going to happen, once you get your whole application filled out, you have to take it again within that 30 days, go down to the county clerk, the courthouse where your charge occurred. So if it's in Nelson County, it's Diane Thompson's office. If it's in LaRue County, you got to go to their court.
Okay.
File it along with a $500 filing fee. Now, that's not legal fee. That's the filing fee. So this process...
$500?
$500.
Okay.
Even if you don't have a lawyer, it's still going to cost you $500. Plus, remember, you've already paid $40 to get the certificate. So at this point, you're $540 in. You're going to file your form. Then there's going to be a process, 60 days, that the prosecutors have to file any objections. Okay? So that 60-day window, who knows what's going to happen there. Then it's 120 days from the date you file before the judge has to have a potential hearing on it or get out a ruling. So my point is, unlike the misdemeanor one, which happens pretty quickly, this process is going to take a while. And so I don't want anybody, I've already had a bunch of people call me say, okay, I've been waiting and waiting and waiting now for years hoping this to come up. I've applied for a job, I need to get it off my record quick. there's no way to make
Yeah,
this happen quick.
Yeah, it could be 30 plus 60 plus, or what?
Yeah, I mean,
it could be 200 days.
It could be. That's exactly right.
yeah.
It's exactly right. And even then, that's just the order saying that it's going to happen. Now the question's going to be, how long will it take all the different agencies to get it cleaned off the record? And so that's another important part of the application. It's going to ask you on that application, what agencies do you want me to order to erase this? And so it's going to be important for you as the person, the defendant, to try and think of everybody you came into contact with. Nelson County Sheriff's Office, Kentucky State Police, Nelson County Jail. If you went to a different jail facility, you want that. And get a list of everybody you can think of so that they are part of the court order ordering them to erase your record. And then what I'm going to tell everybody is I think you really do need to follow up with those agencies and say, hey, did you get me off of here? Run a report, check on it. Because it's one thing to have the court order. Obviously, people will comply with the court order, but that doesn't mean they're not going to miss it or it's not going to get dropped. And really, you're the one that wants this done, so let's get it done.
So in most cases, your certificate that you pay $40 for and receive is going to have the information. But that last one of all the agencies, you got to go back, and if it's been 10, 15, 20 years, you got to
you really got to think about it.
Recreate in your mind, who all
Exactly. And that to me is the most important part of it. Is let's make sure
because it's not expunged if it's still there.
That's right.
Even though it's
Now, it is possible that a judge will review the application and no hearing will be required.
And it could go faster.
And it could go faster. Now, the good news is this. Once the judge orders it, signs the order of expungement, you are now allowed under Kentucky law to tell an employer that you have not been charged, convicted, anything with a felony. In fact, you don't even have to bring it up. And that's what the law says. And so if somebody goes out and runs a criminal record check, it's not going to be there after all this process happens. But here's the important thing, and we kind of alluded to this at the beginning. This is just the state's official records. Most people, most employers, they run your name through Google. They run your name through Facebook. There is nothing under this law that requires other non-governmental agencies to have to go and scrub their record clean as well. So here's what I don't know, and to me it's the interesting question. What if the employer has looked up on Google and saw that in 1993 you were charged with possession of controlled substance, first offense, Class D felony, convicted of it, asks you on the application, have you ever been convicted of a felony? And you write no. Are you lying or not lying? And what are they going to say about you? Because the law says you're allowed to say no. So to me, that's where we're still going to have a big issue here. And I don't know if you remember, we talked about this, it was almost a year ago probably. In Europe, some countries in Europe have passed a law telling Google, you have to erase the history. You don't get to keep the history of something that happened to somebody for ever and ever because of stuff like this. We're trying to make this be a quote-unquote clean slate for folks, and yet thanks to the internet and Google and the Wayback Machine, it's just not a clean slate. So I think society's still got some issues to grapple with here that are unanswered.
But, your point is made a second ago was the fact that there may be some people that would, given the opportunity, say that person aggrieved me and was charged and convicted for that, and I want my say again. They may have already had it. But in many cases, because these are Class D felonies, the victims, I hate to put it in this way that I may regret, but the victims, again, as you mentioned, a drug charge. Yes,
Right.
there are victims of the abuse and use and selling and so forth of drugs, but you know, it's not like somebody's going out and done bodily harm to somebody that has
Exactly. We're not talking about
Yeah.
those types
Yeah.
of crimes, but there are a lot of theft crimes that are on here.
Yeah.
Some smaller thefts which would have a victim, and
Yeah.
you know, so I won't be surprised if in some scenarios we do get some victims showing up and objecting. And same for some prosecutors and judges. You know, folks may not realize this, but it's very, even though we have one standard law across the state, it varies greatly county by county what happens if you violate that law. So a crime committed here in Nelson County will be punished harsher than that same crime committed in Jefferson County every single time. Every single time. So what's going to happen with the expungement? Who knows?
Yeah. If John Doe is convicted of a felony in Tennessee, but he was a resident of Kentucky when he did that, he is still a resident of Kentucky. Can it expunge a Tennessee crime, even though they have different classifications of their felonies?
That's a great question, and the easy answer is no.
No.
This is a Kentucky law.
Yeah.
It will take care of Kentucky
Crime.
felonies.
So-
That's right. So if you're a resident of Kentucky but have a felony on your record from another state, we can't help you with that. Vice versa, if you're from another state but had a crime in Kentucky, we can probably help you with that. You're going to get, you know, the benefit of this law change.
Okay.
And I think a lot of other states have this law or something similar to it. Last thing, I see we're about time. Let me just tell folks, this is designed so that you don't need a lawyer. Obviously, you can hire lawyers. We'll all charge you a nice fee and help you with the paperwork. But there's also a couple of organizations out there that are helping, if you can't afford it, to help with the paperwork. And I'm not affiliated with them, not associated with them. I don't know anything about them, but I saw cleanslate.org is a group that is offering some free legal help to help fill out the paperwork if anybody needs it. So feel free to look them up, cleanslate.org.
Okay. Again, for people that want to talk to you about this more or about any other thing that the legal world of McCoy and Houston attorneys at law can help them with, where do they find you? How do they find you?
So you can physically find me just down the street from the radio station here, 114 South 3rd Street. Also have an office in Louisville at 108 Browns Lane that my partner Sheila heads up. You can call us, either one of us, at 1-800-254-4444, or find us on the web at mccoyandhouston.com.
All right. Well, we appreciate it very much, and we hope that you've answered some questions that our listening audience may have, and hopefully can make their life or the life of one of their family or loved ones a little better.
Absolutely.
Maybe.